I grew up with an advisor father. When I got into the industry through osmosis, I already knew it, so it was a duck to water. I became an advisor because in those days you either had to be an actuary or an advisor to make it to the top. I became an advisor. Then I went back indoors, so to speak, and became a manager, rose up the ranks. And so we set about to build probably what would now be called a disruptor. We built central sourcing, which allowed single agents, tied agents, to become multi-agents. That was really successful, which then gave me job opportunities elsewhere. Went and joined a very good global firm. When I joined that firm, rose up the ranks, did everything, managed all of their dealer groups, their mergers and acquisitions, all of that, but it was still leaving me hollow. And what was leaving me hollow was it was easy to buy something and bring your culture to it, but the problem is what you bought often had a different culture. So I became very disillusioned with that, decided to opt out and decided to semi-retire, and then Pez and I caught up, and when we caught up we decided that we shared a couple of those things and we better build something that actually mattered. Your background?
If I put it right back, a fisherman and a plumber and drainer by trade. Got into the financial services industry in '88. That's where I met Tony. Tony was my BDM. I was lucky enough, I joined National Mutual and was mentored and fostered in a group of guys who a number of them are in our company, including Dermot and Paul Beecham, in a group of the high performers. Similar to Tony, rose through the ranks, ran marketing, technical, ran the group insurances area, and ended up running the distribution and marketing strategy for AXA Asia Pacific. So I think it was 2003 I started consulting to Tony's business unit. And it was through that we sort of reignited what was a long-standing friendship. And so we, I think it was 2004, we started to develop a business plan which was primarily for ourselves at that time, looking at what we'd do. We gravitated back to the field of what we knew, but also more importantly, where we felt that there was a significant opportunity to make a difference in the marketplace over what was being done.
And then we looked at dealer groups themselves and we said, what's missing? So in doing that, we went, institutions have got it right in that they were buying distribution at the time. Well, we went, we don't want to buy it, we want to create it. And we went that if you create the distribution, that can give you the support for some of these incubator type businesses that we wanted to create that would make a difference in our opinion. So we created Madison. And then in Madison, I think our first year, we bought an existing licensee. We changed the profile of that licensee irreconcilably. It was drastically different after 6 months than what it was we bought. And then we rebuilt it. And we rebuilt it by bringing staff into it, by bringing a vision into it, and importantly attracting advisors that we valued.
Oh, it's probably something where it achieved an initial growth phase that we needed to make, and that was we had a strong representation in Queensland and New South Wales, but almost nothing, or I don't think it was anything at all in Victoria. So the other AFSL gave us the opportunity to cement a spot in both South Australia and Victoria. They also had some good staff in there that could plug some gaps that we had initially. But again, it was an opportunity for us to, I suppose, absorb that, take a step back, have a look at everything, so almost review where we'd got to against what we'd set out to build, and sort of reevaluate and take a second breath and go again from there.
So some of the things that attract people to dealer groups, that attract people to build dealer groups, are the capital sale side of it. Others are they get driven by the numbers. We don't want, and let's be really vocal on this one, we don't want 1,000 advisors. We actually don't want 200 or 300 advisors. Numbers aren't our big thing. What we want is advisors that make a difference for their clients. And on the bell curve of life, what we've found is that there's very few that are up at that upper echelon that are actually either incredibly gifted in terms of their market knowledge and the value they can create for the clients, the care that they can show clients and the rest of it. We wanted to appeal to that group, or they're the people we wanted to work with. And then there's a great majority that are sort of form the rump of the industry, and they're loyal citizens and they do great jobs for clients, but they're not at the cutting edge, and we wanted to work more at that end. And then there's this nebulous group down the other end that in our opinion they're getting forced out of the industry because they don't want to reskill, or they don't want to change, or what they're offering isn't right for the customer anymore. And we think that's great. We don't want to be a part of that. The other thing we found was that, in the scans, and if you do the updates today, there's 20-odd thousand advisors in the industry, 4,000 licensees. 80% of advisors are controlled by 20% of the licensees, which are controlled in the main by institutions. And we just went, well, if we've got a disillusionment with these institutions, and Mark's consulting work had identified the same thing, then maybe they're the people we want to appeal to. So the advisors looking after, if you like, more affluent clients who are looking for more holistic financial planning opportunities, or estate planning on the risk side opportunities, and advisors that in the main don't want to do what an institution tells them to do. Now, that's not to say there's not a place for those people. There's obviously a very big place for them. It just wasn't in our place.
And probably off that, we sort of, and if we reflect back to as we were writing our business plan, it was done with the experience of what we'd learnt in the past, but as Tony said, with some of my more recent consulting, and then some of the white papers that we'd accessed. And that was, notwithstanding you've got advisors, what were the key components that we wanted to build the Madison offer around? And that was compliance. So number one was compliance. You're only as good as the worst person in your group, and we wanted to ensure that we didn't have that risk of bringing down a good business that was built. So we had to focus on that, but also we wanted to change the culture of compliance, because compliance in the past had been seen as an anchor, something that advisors hated, and we wanted to have it built bred in them and seen to be something that they could work with to actually create a more valuable business for themselves. The other thing that I think that we identified was obviously a platform, that we wanted to not only find a platform but own a platform and actually lead the market in building and delivering to our advisors something that allowed them to differentiate their advice and do more holistic advice. We'd identified that notwithstanding advisors, I think sometimes might like to play around and be the investment manager. Fundamentally, they shouldn't be. They can spend a lot of their time there, and at some point they'll fail. All investment managers fail, so that we'd set something up whereby if that failure took place, it could, the blame could be laid, and you'd bring in someone else to replace that, and the advisor's not wearing the brunt of that investment failure, and allowed the advisor to focus more around strategic advice and/or considering other parts of the advice chain. So that was an area where, funnily enough, we'd said we were only going to be a low service dealer group. in as much that we build our pricing model where we would facilitate and drive knowledge share, which is another big one, because most other groups that we knew, they all competed against each other, and a lot of people had good ideas, but they weren't willing to share. And, Tony, I think every time will challenge the group. If I give you an idea and you give me an idea and we trade that. The old philosophy there. But not many groups were doing it. So we effectively said, we'll build that. We'll assist any of our practices who put their hand up and say, I want someone to come in and challenge my business, which we're still willing to do. Sometimes they don't like the answers that we give them, but hey, we're straight up and down, black and white. And the other part of what we said was compliance. But fundamentally, what we said was the dealer group would be built around compliance, knowledge share, and then of course we do commissions, you do all those fundamental things. But in the end, what we've actually developed, like anything, you start to go, but we want it more, or our people want more. And so we've developed more. But we certainly had made a commitment to our business partners and our board that we can't afford to scrimp on the costs and the resources around compliance and research, and these are the things that you've got to hang your hat with good advice on. There were other things that we've developed out that have fallen out of that, such as proactive portfolios, first multi-asset, multi-sector SMA in the marketplace as Lonsec rated. Now, it's amazing that when we look back, we can go, have some of these things been as successful as what they could have been? And it's like, no, they haven't. But it's actually because we're poor at marketing versus necessarily poor at the solution, because Proactive was rated well by Lonsec. It's been a good multi-asset, multi-sector solution for advisors at a minimal cost. And it delivered, the benefits of SMA, better tax arbitrage, full transparency, all the things that we were being told that people wanted to acquire through a product solution.
But another great one we did was money market. So we had a great idea.
Yeah.
We got some really good partners to come into the fray. And money market, so for those who are uninitiated, in Australia, term deposits are a very large chunk of Australia's wealth. And quite frankly, banks offer rates. Those rates are typically, they offer honeymoon rates up front, a whole range of things, but there's no arbitrage of term deposits. The banks don't want you to move your money. So they give you a honeymoon rate, they lock you into that, and then they don't tell you but the rate's reduced, or they offer you a rate that's not competitive but they know that you're probably not going to move. So we decided, why don't we steal or borrow from Webjet or one of the big comparators.
Yeah.
Why don't we borrow from Webjet or one of the other comparator organisations, and why don't we create a comparator of term deposits? Well, we and ourselves knew what we wanted to do, but then we had to find the partners that could help us do it. So money market now is, in the beginning, PHAROS groups represented a very large chunk of the money flowing through it. Now we're less than 7 or 8%. And that 7 or 8% though, collectively, money market's $3 billion, and it hasn't even gone to the direct consumer yet. So a couple of the things we've been able to do is actually put funding behind, and Mark's talked about the platform. We actually put $2 to $3 million of our own money, our money and our partners' money into it. That's not money that we borrowed from, that we went out to our clients and got. That was money we got from our partners and ourselves, and we put it into it because we believed in it. In money market, it was the same thing. We put our own money into building the thing, and so in other words, we backed it with us.
That was probably another big point of differentiation, that when we